Welcome back. Congress, they're at a stalemate when it comes to the next round of stimulus, even though tens of millions of Americans out of work and struggling just to pay their bills. 8 million people in this country have fallen into poverty, and that's only since May when the last round of stimulus started to run out. To give you a frame of reference, what we're dealing with, that's nearly the population of all of New York City. In just the past week, another 900,000 Americans filed for jobless benefits, more than 100,000 every single day. Plus, nearly 1 in 5 people say now that they're having trouble paying their rent or mortgage. My next guest, a restaurant worker who lost her job in March, and she's been struggling to pay the bills ever since. She says she will soon have to start selling off possessions if Congress doesn't provide desperately needed relief. Rachel Litwiller, she joins us. Going back not too many months ago, you, your husband, and your 2 kids, you guys were doing okay, right?
Yeah, actually, things were pretty good. My husband is an electrician apprentice. That was going smooth. I was working in the evenings and on the weekends. Kids are at school, you know, normal stuff like everybody.
Then COVID happened and the bottom dropped out. You lose your job. Both you and your husband also get COVID, I understand.
Yes. So I didn't lose my job in terms of like permanent loss. I have the ability to still work there in terms of they're saving my spot for me. So I'm fortunate in that. But restaurants in Michigan were one of the first places that closed down, just like a lot of other places. So I think it was March 14th was the last day I think I worked. And my husband was still able to work. And I think it was like 2 weeks that they were off for. Well, then everything starts kind of leveling out some, and we end up with COVID.
We've been speaking to a lot of long haulers who still carry symptoms from it. You got it in August, but you're still feeling some of the effects, right?
Oh, yeah, I am actually. You know, like my head wants to say, oh, it's just you're getting cold or allergy symptoms. But in all honesty, like I can tell the difference in terms of like my tightness in my chest, or I'm coughing. I'm more winded than I feel like I should be from just like normal things, you know, walking around the house. And I still don't have a fully recovered sense of smell and taste, which has been very, very strange. It makes eating not any fun. And, you know, I'm honestly fearful that these things won't completely subside.
Help us with the math. I speak to some folks here who, when they heard about the stimulus, they said, oh, look, you know, people living high off the hog off this thing. They don't want to go back to work because they're having it so good. And then when I hear these conversations, I said, you know what, let me get on people who are living the reality of this and just put that nonsense to rest. You want to work, and you need to work. Yeah. You need those 2 incomes. Go through some of the realities of when the stimulus ended, just some of the decisions you guys have had to make, and some of the things you might be looking at if help doesn't come soon.
Before, we were really good with being consistent on paying everything on time. We weren't having to just kind of like barter with anybody about who's going to get what, where, when, and how. And it's changed that game now. So there are times where I'm having to call certain companies and be like, well, it's going to be late. If I have to deal with the late fees, then that's what it is. At least things aren't being shut off. So that's uncomfortable, to say the least. And my children, I've got one son that's home all the time with me, and he is online learning. So that doesn't leave a whole lot of room for me I can't just go and wait tables. It's kind of nuts because I don't really understand how they expect anybody to be able to balance all of these things and still have their needs met.
To me, the thing that's concerning is, and I'm not trying to drag you into the world of politics, but we all want to reopen this, but now we're seeing these numbers going back up. We're seeing people who refuse to put masks on. We're seeing all the rest. And we got the fall and the winter in front of us. You're in Michigan, and you give a perfect example. I mean, there was once a study that About half this country is $400, an unexpected $400 expense where they can't cover it. Your heater went out in your car. You're in Michigan. Things get cold. You need a heater. So it's, even if everything breaks right, it's hard, let alone if something goes wrong.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. My heater did go out of my car about 2 weeks ago, and it was such a labor-intensive process that it took 10 hours, and it ran us, I want to say it was over $1,200 for that expense. And fortunately, my husband had budgeted some things and figured it out. But, you know, if that hadn't worked out that way, we would have been in really big trouble. And really, that money that we worked out for that, fine, but there were other things we needed it for. So the idea that this second stimulus may not come through and that people are just disregarding this as like, oh, it's no big deal, like, let's keep it moving. We aren't seeing that as a reality. It's almost like people are just craving to get back to normal, whatever that is, so badly that they're willing to sacrifice everyone's health and well-being.
Listen, if the numbskulls in Washington don't get their act together and pass another stimulus bill sooner than later, give an idea some of the tough choices you and your family are going to have to make here.
Well, you know, it's going to be the holidays soon, and with children and families and whatnot, and the bills go up like crazy because our winters get to be pretty harsh here. You know, I'm not above selling some things that I own that are of value. And, you know, I don't want to do that, but it's just stuff when it comes down to it. If it's a question of my bills being paid, my children's needs being met, and them having a decent holiday, I took on the responsibility of parenting in the first place, so that's part of my responsibility if I have to sacrifice. But do I really want to have to start selling things that I know that are of value, such as things I inherited when my mother passed away? And that's what I have left. So, you know, that's something that's definitely crossed my mind.
I got to tell you, I appreciate so much you sharing time with us, Rachel, and sharing your story, which I know a lot of people are nodding as they listen on television right now. But again, thank you, and I wish you the best of luck. All right?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the fact that you're allowing me to be a voice.
And if you are struggling to make ends meet, obviously you see you're not alone. We'd like to hear your story. So please, if you want to share it with us, you can email us at rfl@rnntv.com. You can also send us a note on Twitter. Our handle is LarryEP13. And maybe just like our last guest, you might even be a guest right here on our program. Coming up next, we will check in on the presidential race. Election Day now less than 20 days away. Some new numbers show where we stand, and they're not very good ones for one of the candidates.